to this Global Prophetic Alliance South Africa Thursday morning live. Thank you. Oh, my husband bringing me coffee because I haven't had coffee yet this morning. Hold on, let me just see if are you oriented correctly. I need to make sure nothing's pushing anything. My goodness, there we go. I think that should be fine. Tell me if that's fine. If you are on and you can hear me and see me all okay. My word, I'm knocking things over. Good morning, my lovely Milani. Good morning, gorgeous Curl. Morning, Mama Tessa. Good morning, good morning. Sometimes you might have to put your name if you have like a word handle that I don't recognize. Morning, beautiful Bridget. No problem at all to catch up later. Mora, my friend, all the way from New Zealand. Good morning, courageous Conrad. Hello, my lovely Tamsin. Okay, so this morning we are on here on YouTube Live. Good morning, mighty Melanie. Welcome this morning. And we have crossed over last night, actually. Good morning, wonderful Wendy. We crossed over into the new Hebrew month of Cheshvan. So today is actually the first of Cheshvan. And so we are going to just learn a little bit about Cheshvan this morning, and also about, yes, how, as always, God is so intentional about the prophetic significance of the different Hebrew months. And Cheshvan is absolutely no different. And it is such a significant time. So I'm sure that most of you here, good morning, special Sylvia. Welcome, my lovely. I'm sure that most of you here, possibly those of you who aren't from South Africa, or maybe not from the Western Cape, but most of you on here will have heard of what has happened at Milnerton High School here in Cape Town, and the bullying incident. And now obviously there is a little bit of kind of he said, she said, and story that one of the boys who was bullied was originally bullying somebody else. You know, it's just absolutely shocking. Actually, the whole incident is just absolutely shocking, and shocking, I think, probably because the videos have gone viral, etc. Not necessarily shocking. I'm pretty sure that Milnerton High School isn't the only high school beset with these issues. In fact, we all know that it isn't. Good morning, gorgeous Carol, all the way from, oh my goodness, you see my eyes defeat me, and I can't see your flag. It was either the States or the UK. I don't want to offend anybody, but I couldn't see the exact details of that tiny little flag. I'm so sorry. Anyway, so there was just this viral video, for those of you who don't know the story, of these eight or nine boys bullying the UK. I thought I saw that. Thank you so much. Thank you, my lovely. These 8 or 9 boys bullying these younger boys, and the fact that in this day and age of cameras and cell phones and videos going viral, the fact that, they record these things and, I don't know, somehow don't expect them to get out, I don't know. Or maybe they do expect them to get out. Anyway, it's effectively just this issue of these boys, some of whom were on the first team rugby, going into SA schools and things like that. And it's their futures really hang in the balance right now, just because of this incident. But when we were talking about it yesterday evening, and I was just saying to my online people, because we do demon busting online every second Wednesday evening. And I was saying to the people are doing the demon busting with me, I was saying to them that, you know, this isn't just an isolated incident. It is more a symbol, sign, whatever you want to call it, of of a nation that has become used to systemic violence. And that when, you know, our children are raised in a nation or in a space that teaches that violence is the answer and violence is the way to achieve your aim. Sorry, got an itch in my throat now. Let me have a sip of coffee. You know, and then we are surprised when they act out the way that they do. And also we're surprised, I think, when they do as we say, and when they do as we do and not as we say, you know. As a nation, we cannot teach our children that violence isn't the answer if we don't actually live by that ourselves. And I think all the world around, personally, just in spaces that I've been in, you see things like road rage and things like that increasing. I think our propensity for violence as human beings has increased dramatically. And I think that that is all the world around. That is certainly not just in South Africa, but South Africa as a nation, we have a culture. Actually, not really. It's not really necessarily determined by race. It is a culture that goes across the different races of alcohol and violence, alcohol and gender-based violence, alcohol and, you know, child abuse, alcohol and sports violence. You know, we are a nation of heavy drinkers, and that drinking leads to violence in many instances. Why am I saying all of this? Because we were talking last night about the spirit of Athaliah. Now, many of you might have watched War Room's broadcast that I did not so long ago with Emma and Louise Reed, where God had given me this word about the spirit of Athaliah. And the fact that the spirit of Athaliah, it's not that it's a new spirit, she's been around since whenever, but the spirit of Athaliah has been given almost I wouldn't say free range, but I would say she has been given extra space to move in extra activity, additional activity, escalated activity for the next 7 years. For a 7-year cycle, the spirit of Athaliah has been given kind of almost a free range to move on the earth. And I think it was last night, Emma and Louise and Hannah Graham did a power hour about combating Athaliah. I think I didn't watch it, but I saw somebody sent me the link, and I had a quick glance at the transcript. So, and you can go and watch that for ideas on how to combat Athaliah, if I've got that right. Somebody please just type in the comments. Why am I saying all of this? Because obviously God doesn't leave us, you know, God doesn't say, oh, well, Athaliah is being given elevated, range and room to roam on the earth for the next 7 years, and you are all just going to have to be there at the kind of, you know, at the mercy of the Spirit. No, of course he doesn't. Of course he doesn't, because what is God's ultimate aim? His ultimate aim is to build his kingdom here on earth, and also to bring glory to his name. For us, his children, his sons and daughters, to bring glory to his name. All of that to say that one of the hallmarks of the month of Cheshvan, the new month of Cheshvan that we have crossed over. We crossed over into last sunset yesterday evening. Today is the 1st of Cheshvan. One of the hallmarks of the month of Cheshvan is the call to stand in your authority. So let us all go and watch the Power Hour from last night. Let us all go and find out what Emma and Louise and Hannah said about combating the spirit of Athaliah. But can I just be so bold as to say that no matter what blueprints and strategies you engage in to combat the spirit of Athaliah, if you are not standing in your authority, none of them are they're not going to work. You have to stand in your authority, in the authority given to you by Jesus, in the authority that comes from you being in him and him being in you. So we need to be declared. And you might not know exactly what that, you might be thinking, does that look like? Am I not, doing that already? Whatever the case may be. And the Holy Spirit is the best person to ask if you are standing in your authority. But why would I say this? I would say this because the spirit of Athaliah looks to destroy legacy. It looks to destroy legacy. And the month of Manasseh points us in the direction of inheritance and legacy. So let's have a look at this. So here we have the month of Cheshvan started today. Oh, can somebody Google and pop in the comments what date in the Gregorian calendar the month of Cheshvan ends, please? It's 29 or 30 days. If somebody could Google that and just pop that in the comments for me, I would appreciate that. So here we are in the month of Cheshvan. It is the 8th month of the biblical calendar, and it is the 2nd month of the civil calendar. So we are now in 5786, and Cheshvan is the 2nd month of the civil calendar, but the 8th month of the biblical calendar. And it is, the month of Cheshvan is known as the month of covenant. Okay, there we go. Thank you, Conrad. So Cheshvan ends on, okay, now I've got two different answers here. All right. Maybe I'll look and pop it there later. So it goes from sunset, went from sunset last night, and it goes from sunset, either sunset on the 20th of November, or we're not sure. We're confused here whether it's the 20th or the 22nd. So the month of Cheshvan is known as the month of covenant and the month of the Messiah. The month of covenant and the month of the Messiah. And one of the reasons of that is because it is the month of Manasseh. So remember Joseph. Joseph had two sons, Ephraim and Manasseh. And the prophetic Joseph's portion and Joseph's prophecy was divided between his two sons, Ephraim and Manasseh. And remember that for whatever reason, the firstborn blessing or birthright was taken from Manasseh and given to Ephraim. For whatever reason, Jacob doesn't explain why when he prophesies over them, but this is what he does. He takes from Manasseh and he gives to Ephraim. So it is a month to pay careful attention to inheritance. And whenever we talk of inheritance, we need to also then remember legacy. Whenever we talk of inheritance, we need to remember legacy. Why? Because what we inherit becomes our legacy. What we inherit becomes our legacy. Right? Physically, if we inherit from our parents, property, finances, etc., that becomes a legacy that we leave our children. And then spiritually as well, what we inherit spiritually from the generations that have gone before us, we leave that as a legacy for our children. So the month of Manasseh, the month when the birthright, the firstborn birthright was taken from Manasseh and given to Ephraim because of whatever God could see coming in the future, we don't know. It is a month to recognize that there is always going to be warfare for your inheritance and your legacy. You are going to need to warfare for both your inheritance and your legacy. And for some of you, that means physical inheritance that you need to warfare for. Because if you do not warfare for your inheritance, how do you then have a legacy to pass on to your children? Physically, spiritually, financially, whatever that looks like. The month of Manasseh reminds us that we have to stand in our authority and we have to warfare for our inheritance and our legacy. Now, the spirit of Athaliah is anti-legacy. She will come in and want to destroy your legacy. She will want to take your legacy out, that legacy will not be able to be passed down to your children and your children's children and your children's children's children, because this spirit of violence and murder and slander, and who wants to destroy future generations to prevent them from walking in their inheritance, which is our legacy. That is the spirit of Athaliah. That is what, thank you so much, my lovely. That is what, of course, I could have just looked in my own diary, which is here somewhere. That is what we talk about when we talk about standing in your authority, when we talk about warfaring for your inheritance and your legacy. The thing is that in all previous years, I have taught on the prophetic significance of Cheshvan. I have taught on the daughters of Zelophehad and their warfaring for their inheritance at times when that just wasn't even heard of. I have taught on all of that. And we have had opportunity previously in previous years to warfare for that inheritance, to warfare for that legacy. Now we actually face a very real threat to our inheritance and our legacy in a spirit that we haven't faced to this extent previously. And if we haven't paid attention to the prophetic warnings of God before, we should have been prepared for this, people. We should have been prepared for this, because God hasn't only been talking about this for a short time. I did a live on the spirit of Athaliah before I went to Scotland. That was what? August? Sometime in August. I did a teaching on the spirit of Athaliah, on the word God had given me. How many of you remember it? You know, how many of you went and said to the Lord, right, how do I stand against this? I recognize this operating in my life. How do I stand against it? We need to pay attention. We need to pay attention. These prophetic teachings that I do, these prophetic words that I bring, because I walk in the office of the prophet, I bring the word of the prophet, I bring the word of the Lord. So whether I'm teaching you about the Hebrew months, I'm bringing it from a prophet's perspective, which is thus a warning or a exhortation or a reminder, whatever the case may be. But the point is, I don't go live twice a week because I don't have anything else to do. I go live twice a week to bring the word of the Lord, to prepare you, to equip you, to educate you, to give you an opportunity to get ahead of the things that God is speaking about. And this is just an example of that. It's just an example of that. So, the month of Cheshvan is the month where the constellation of Scorpio is in the sky. The Scorpio. And immediately what should come to your mind is the verse from the New Testament, I forget exactly the address right now, where it says that we will be able to tramp on snakes and scorpions. And obviously, in the spirit, there aren't very many of us that have daily dealings with snakes and scorpions these days, but in the spirit, in fact, actually, interestingly enough, my son found a scorpion. That is interesting. I didn't have the bandwidth to put those two things together. Yesterday, he found a scorpion in our pool. So, beware of the snakes and scorpions in the spirit. Beware of a spirit like Athaliah that looks like this, and we combat that. Beware, beware, be ready, be everything. Did somebody say they love my cup? I am, because you can see it says fierce female, right? Okay, so I'm digressing. A bit of light-hearted interjection here. My boys bought this cup for me. I don't think my husband has read the whole, what it says on the front and the back. But the words are peeling off a little bit from too many times in the dishwasher. But it says fierce female. And then it says underneath that, making SHIT happen. Come on. Let's not be all religious and holier than thou right now. It is funny. From my boys, my 3 boys, fierce female, making SHIT happen. Say that in your mind. You won't get struck by lightning. It is funny, okay? And I like to think of myself as a fierce female making stuff happen, stirring stuff up, disrupting stuff in the spirit, okay? So I'm glad you like my cup. I don't think my husband thought when he poured my coffee into this cup. Okay, so, right. The month of Manasseh, month of covenant, month of the Messiah, okay? The month also of Scorpio, that's the constellation in the sky, and therefore a month where it is a reminder to stand in your authority. Because what is that verse, Luke 10:10? Somebody put it on the screen. Thank you very much, my lovely. Luke 10:10, what is that? Exactly. Come on. It is exactly right. It is exactly right. And also just, it makes me feel better because, to be frank with all of you, just being authentic and completely vulnerable, since my mom passed, I've really been struggling with depression. Depression is something that has bugged me for a lot of my life, starting, I think, from my parents' divorce when I was a teenager. And it's definitely a familiar spirit that tries to get in there and wins sometimes. I'm just being honest, it wins sometimes. And since my mom's death, I've really been struggling. And can I just say this for anyone who's lost a parent or a spouse or whatever, I think the thing for me, my mom and I had a difficult relationship. I loved her. I loved my mom very much. And I inherited so much from her spiritually that I will pass on as legacy. Okay, I loved her. I really did. But we had a difficult relationship because of her brokenness and because I reminded her too much of my dad, and dad went through a very, very bad divorce, and 30 odd years later it was still bad. So I reminded her too much of my dad. She struggled with that a lot, and we just had a difficult relationship. And I find that the grief is almost more difficult because I think, and I'm verbally processing with all of you online right now, but I think I'm grieving the relationship I never had with her. I think if that makes sense to anybody who knows about these things, it feels like that for me. I'm grieving. I'm going to cry now. I'm grieving the relationship I never had with her. I'm grieving that. And she's been, over the last year or two, sort of on a slow slide into dementia, Alzheimer's, we weren't sure what. And so before this, the salvation of our relationship was that we could talk about spiritual things, and that we were, and but over the last year or two, that had gone because she didn't have the capacity for that anymore. And so I'm grieving. I'm not grieving her from right now, from when she passed, I'm realizing, but I'm grieving her from like a couple of years ago. I don't. I think maybe I'm just making more out of this than needs to be made. But it's like I'm grieving the relationship we never had, the relationship I longed for with her. I longed for, and I'm grieving the fact that over the last couple of years we couldn't even have the conversations that that kept our relationship solid. And also, as she slid into dementia and Alzheimer's, effectively she reached a point where she blamed me for everything. I don't think, not on purpose, but yeah. So there's so many things I'm grieving, and I don't think that I can put them all into words. But there is this depression that is trying to hook in, and I've been debating with myself whether I should be on antidepressants, whether I should go back onto antidepressants, or, how is the best, healthiest way to deal with this. Anyway, why am I telling you this? I'm telling you this because so often people come onto, things like this, onto posts like this, or they watch me or they watch somebody else and they think, oh, you've got it all together. You are always a fierce female making stuff happen. And yes, I would have to say that 90% of the time I am, but 10% of the time, or sometimes more than 10% of the time, I'm not, because I'm dealing with very human stuff. And so if you've lost someone, if you're grieving someone, if you are, it just feels like, actually, if I think about it, such a lot of loss. If I think about my Jen, my dad, now my mom, it feels like a lot of loss in not a very big space of time, but yeah, I don't know if grief builds up, but it feels like maybe it does. Anyway, I'm digressing. So, even for me, in the space that I'm in, as I fight this depression that tries to hook my being, I feel like, I have to stand in my authority. And I'm realizing, as I verbally process with all of you, that finding that scorpion in the pool yesterday, my son finding that scorpion in the pool, is, wow, Sally, it's a reminder to stand in my authority. I can grieve in my authority. I can be sad as I stand in my authority. But the one thing I cannot do is I cannot allow the enemy a foothold whilst I grieve or be sad. I have to stand in my authority so that the enemy doesn't have a foothold at all. This collar irritates me. Does this collar irritate any of you? I don't know whether I should be buttoning the whole thing up or what I should be doing, but it just irritates me. It doesn't sit properly. My goodness. Sorry, ADHD brain working overtime here right now. The month of Manasseh. The month of Manasseh. The month of the Messiah, because you can hear, right, the similarities between Manasseh and Messiah. It is the month, and I want each and every one of you to stand in faith for this. I want you to stand in faith for this. It is the month where you should receive a heightened sense of smell, spiritual smell, where you should actually be able to, and you can claim it, smell the enemy and smell the Holy Spirit. The fragrance of myrrh is what is associated with the resurrected Messiah, and thus a heightened sense of smell is relevant in this month. And I am claiming that because I have allergies and so my nose is blocked, and I'm just like, no, I want to smell in the Spirit. Even if my physical nose is blocked, I want to be able to smell the Holy Spirit. I want to be able to smell the demonic. I want to be able to sniff them out. So this month of Cheshvan is a month where you get to actually step into that. Trust for that. Be expectant for that. It is also a month to forget and to leap up and away. Why? Where is my... Here we go. Oopsie, something fell on the floor. Excuse that. Here we go. Genesis 48. This is let's just read the prophetic words over Manasseh by Jacob and by Moses. No, not 40. Here we go. Jacob's sons. Vine. You see, this is because why I should have actually marked the passages off, and now I can't find them. Now I cannot find them. Wait, let me look in Deuteronomy. I'm a bit discombobulated, just excuse me. I'm not quite my absolutely normal self yet. Deuteronomy 33. Deuteronomy 33. Oh, right. Jacob prophesied over Joseph. That was, and then here, Deuteronomy, Moses prophesies over Gad, Dan, Asher. Okay, let's not do this right now because I'm just not able to find what I'm looking for. Let's go on. Okay, so here we have Ephraim and Manasseh. We have Manasseh who's the firstborn, but the blessing of the firstborn is given to Ephraim. Okay, and then we have, so what are we talking about? What are we talking about when we talk about Manasseh? Manasseh, the concept of the name Manasseh means to leap. It means to leap up and away. It means to forget. Why is that important right now? Because we are in this time where God is doing a new thing, where he has called us to forget the former things, to forget the former things, to forget the former things. Whoever you're with right now, if you're with anybody, if you're watching with somebody, if somebody's sitting next to you on the train or in the car or whatever, nudge them and say to them, called to forget the former things, and step into the new. We did this activation at School of Prophets a little while back, and if you're wanting to apply for School of Prophets next year, the registration forms are going to be going out soon, so by the end of this month, so keep your eyes and ears open on social media so that you can sign up for School of Prophets for next year. And that is online and in person. So if you're not in South Africa and you want to do School of Prophets in rands, which is very reasonable compared to pounds, because it is based on the Raising Prophets. It follows the Raising Prophets syllabus of GPA in Glasgow. So you can do it in South Africa for much less. But we did this activation where we pushed each other, we prayed and prophesied over each other and then pushed each other into the new. And sometimes we need somebody else to push us into the new. Sometimes we need somebody else to remind us to forget the former things and step into the new. And in the month of Manasseh, it's not just a stepping into the new. It's not just I'm forgetting the former things and I'm just stepping, one little tiny step, one small step for man, one big step for mankind. It's not that sort of thing. It is actually, there is a leaping up and away, where I'm not just forgetting the former things and taking one small step into the new thing, but the former things are still right here. I'm actually taking a leap. I'm taking a leap up and away out of the former things into the new things. And for some of you, you need to do that as a prophetic act, as we into this on this new day, this 1st of Cheshvan, this month of Manasseh, this month of the Messiah, this month of covenant, this month of the fragrance of myrrh, this month where your sense of smell should be heightened, all this month of warring, remembering to war for inheritance so that you can have war for legacy, this month to remember that Athaliah has been unleashed on the earth, and we need to be the ones who stand in our authority and actually combat her, because she would desire to take out the future of our nation and the nations of the earth. And what better way to take the future of nations of the earth but with world war? Because who fights in world wars but the youth? The youth fight in world wars. It is the young people that get sent into world wars. It is the young people that lose their lives. We've seen that. We have 2 previous world wars to see that with. And Africa, it is Africa's youth that will resource the world, because Africa will contain the biggest majority of youth of any nation. And because of that, it is Africa's youth that will be taken, whether forcefully or by choice, and made to serve in world wars for nations that our governments and politicians, I'm prophesying here, people, our governments and politicians have actually aligned with, nations that we don't necessarily want to align with. But it is Africa's youth that will be fodder for the machines of world war if we allow that to happen. If we do not stand in our authority, if we do not defeat Athaliah, if we do not protect, if we do not call forth the Jehoshabbas, if we do not step into the space of being Jehoshabah and protecting future generations, it is Africa's youth that will be decimated. And God is giving us a big warning about taking authority. We think, because we live in South Africa, not our children. If our nation is aligned with one particular side, and there are troops needed to go into wherever, and remember what happens during world wars, nations get colonized again, because they get invaded again, and their youngsters get carried off to feed the machine, to be fodder for the machine of the world war. It is up to you and me to stand in our authority and make sure that that is not the reality for Africa's youth. That is not the reality for what happens here. And to do that, we have to defeat Athaliah. And to defeat Athaliah, we have got to call forth the women, the Jehoshabbas. Yes, the men as well. The men will step up, absolutely. But it is going to start with the women. Why? Because it always does. It always starts with the women. And I told the story last night, and you might have heard Emma tell it, and I'm going to tell it again. And I'm trusting that she would be fine with it, because she has told it in a public space before. But Emma grew up in Ireland, in Northern Ireland, during the Troubles. You know, the IRA, the war between Protestants and Catholics, and the politicization of religious beliefs, which is what so many nations seem to be for these days, and it never ends well. Can I tell you that? It never ends well. And there would be bombs. In fact, Emma's father's church, he was a pastor of a church in Northern Ireland, was blown up at some point, and because he was the pastor, he would have to go to the houses where the youngsters had been killed, and he would have to console the families, and he would have to stand with the parents, the mothers and the fathers, and give statements to the press and all of that sort of thing. Absolutely horrific. And that is why Emma, when she was here, she made that statement about South Africa: you do not have the corner on trauma. Because we don't. Because other nations have been through trauma. And we're not the only nation that's been traumatized by, things. So, and until one day, something particularly brutal had happened. And the mother of some of the boys that had been murdered in a particularly brutal fashion stood up and said, please, No more. No more retaliation. Please. And that became a war cry amongst the mothers of Northern Ireland, where they started saying together, all of them, please, no more. No more retaliation. No more. We cannot, no matter which side we're on. And that is why it is the women. It is the women that God calls to combat Athaliah. It is the women, the Jehoshaphat. If you don't know who Jehoshaphat is, go read my book. She's in one of my books. Somebody tell me which book of mine she's in. But she is the one who saved the true king of Israel when he was just a baby. He was 6 months old, and hid him in the temple while Athaliah, whose son had died, set herself up as queen of Israel, the only queen Israel ever had. But she was not, she took her position. She wasn't entitled to that position. The story is in Kings. And she then basically just wiped out all the contenders to the throne, all the family, all the children, all the everything. But Jehoshaphat stepped forward and she saved Joash, who was just a baby, and they hid him in the temple for 6 or 7 years and then brought him out and made him king. So this is where the spirit of Athaliah descends from. It's not a she. Spirits aren't gender specific. So it's not that Athaliah is a woman and so the women have to combat her. It's not like that. Please don't even go there. I say she because sometimes it's easier to call them something, and Athaliah was a woman in the Bible. But yet spirits are not gender specific. Spirits are just spirits, okay? So there's no he, she, whatever the case may be. Athaliah is daughter's Jezebel. Athaliah is Jezebel's daughter, and she is worse than her mother. She is worse than her mother. So, wherever you are right now, if you've nudged your neighbor and said to them, time to forget the former things, okay, my brain is stopping braining. I'm going to have to bring this to a close. It's time to forget the former things and leap into the new. If you have time today, if you have space today, as a prophetic act, I want you to leap up and away into the new thing that God has for you. I don't want you to just take a little dainty step, because I'm female and I need to be feminine and everything. I want you to take a big stride. I want you to take a big jump. I want you to leap into the new that God has for you. And some of you need to make that leap physically, in the natural, in terms of where you are, what you're doing, where you're worshiping, the church you're at. Some of you need to make a leap because you have not completely cut ties with the former things. I don't know, you're waiting for permission or something. You have permission. Cut ties with the former things and leap into the new thing. It is a leap of faith for exactly that reason, because you don't know exactly where you're going. That is okay. God does. God does. Okay, Radiant Roz, let's do that Adigero School of Prophets this evening. Will you remind me, please? I'm going to leave it. You just took the message away. Why? Remind me, Roz, we're going to leap into the new this evening. Leap. We're not just going to, a little jump. There we go. Come on, Milani. She just ran and took the biggest leap in her living room. Come on. It's a prophetic act, people. It's a prophetic act that you are stepping into what God has shown you, that you are leaping into, leaping. The picture I get right now is those mountain goats. You know those mountain goats that cling to the side they look like they're clinging to the side of the cliff. And yet they leap with, plenty of, they leap with the most agility, clinging to the side of cliffs. If that's how you feel, if you feel like you're clinging to the side of the cliff right now, which is completely understandable, I think many of us do, remember that you're a mountain goat in the spirit, and you can take that leap. You're not going to fall off the cliff. God won't let you fall. You can take that leap into the new thing that God has for you. But it is important to, if possible, and if you have the energy for this, and I'm releasing the energy over you in Jesus' name, that every day this month of Cheshvan, leap. Every day, when you wake up in the morning, take a leap. Don't just get out of bed, leap out of bed. So that to remind you to forget the former things. And when, the only woman in the Bible that Jesus warns us about is Lot's wife. Why? Because Because, why? Because she looked back. And so some of us, and I can see this so clearly in the spirit right now, some of us have a foot in each camp. We have a foot in the former things and a foot in the new thing, and we're trying to straddle, because why? We want these people in the former things to come with us over. I have news for you. You can't straddle. Your one foot isn't in the new thing. It's just in something that looks like a blinged up version of the old thing. Okay, if you want to leap into the new thing, you have to leap out of that camp of the former things. And those people that you're hanging on to, they can't go with you. Why? I don't know. Maybe because they don't want to. Maybe because they're not ready yet. Maybe because God has another plan for them. For whatever reason, they can't go with you. You need to leap. And that will mean severing of relationships. That will mean losing people. Flynn and I took an enormous leap into the new this year and lost people. That's what happens when you leap into the new. You lose people. It's just part of life. But those people aren't going to stand with you when you stand before Jesus one day and he asks you why you were like Lot's wife and you stood staring backwards and turned into a pillar of salt. So let us just remember this month of Cheshvan. Let us remember to stand in our authority. Let us remember to forget the former things. Let us remember to be leaping up and away into the new. Let us remember the fragrance of myrrh that is significant, symbolic of the resurrected Messiah, and let us be expectant of a heightened sense of smell in the spirit. Let us remember the daughters of Zelophehad, and let us warfare for our inheritance so that we have a legacy. And then let us remember the spirit of Athaliah, and let us be warfaring for our legacy. Our children, whether they be foster, step, spiritual, they are our legacy, and we need to be warfaring for our children and our children's children and the future of the generations of the earth. Let us remember that Manasseh lost the firstborn blessing. We don't know why. And let us not be those to do that. And let us remember also that the Cheshvan is the month of covenant. Why? Because the flood, according to Jewish tradition, the flood where God flooded the earth began on the 17th of Cheshvan and ended the following year on the 27th of Cheshvan. So what did God, there was the flood because God couldn't take the evil on the earth anymore. And he destroyed it, and only Noah and his family, we all know the story. It started on the 17th of Cheshvan. And just remember that after the flood came the rainbow, and that represented covenant. And so Cheshvan is a month of covenant. Don't let the enemy tell you Cheshvan is a month of flood. It's a month of covenant. It is a month of covenant. Okay, I'm going to end there because before I make any more errors in speech, and I know this is just my brain digresses with me, but I trust that this has been significant for each one of you. I trust that it's been helpful for each one of you. I trust that this has spoken into your life, that you have received the word of the Lord that has been released this morning, and that you are going to run with it, that you are going to leap with it like never before, and that you are going to stand in your authority against Athaliah and anything else that might come against the future of our nation or the future of this continent or the future of the nations in the world. In Jesus' mighty name. Have a fabulous Thursday. School of Prophets people, I will see you this evening at 7 o'clock. I'm super excited for this evening. And yes, otherwise, have a wonderful weekend. Let's leap into the new together. Love you. Bye.